In the towering glass world of big corporations, some people are just built to stand out. Their voices carry, their handshakes are firm, and their confidence is as polished as the marble floors they walk on. They're the ones who get seen, get heard, and get remembered. And then, there are the quiet ones. The observers. The ones who figured out long ago that the best way to survive in a world not always built for them is to blend in, to become part of the background. This is a story about one of them. A young woman who had mastered the art of being invisible, doing her job with a quiet diligence that asked for nothing. She thought her greatest strength was not being noticed. But she was about to find out that a single, quiet act of kindness could make a sound so loud it would shake the very foundations of her world. What happens when the person nobody sees does something nobody expects? And what happens when the one person who matters most is watching? Hook. The morning air inside the global headquarters of Innovate Corp was thick with ambition and really expensive coffee. On the 45th floor, conversations were currency, and silence was a weakness. Interns in sharp suits buzzed with a frantic energy, their laughter a bit too loud, their eagerness a little too practiced. They orbited executives like planets around distant suns, just hoping to get noticed. And among them, but never really with them, was Maya. A 22-year-old black intern with eyes that saw everything and a voice that was hardly ever heard. She was a ghost in the corporate machine. She did her job flawlessly, organizing spreadsheets others took credit for and fetching coffees for meetings she was never invited to. She learned fast that in a place like Innovate Corp, which prided itself on being loud and disruptive, her quiet nature felt like something she should apologize for. She figured keeping her head down was the only way to survive the last 3 weeks of her internship. But she was about to learn a lesson no business school could ever teach, that the quietest acts of humanity often make the most deafening impact. Section 1, The Art of Invisibility. Innovate Corp wasn't just a company, it was a legend. Built on the idea of non-stop progress, thinking outside the box was the bare minimum. The building itself was a monument to this, a skyscraper of steel and glass that pierced the clouds. Inside, the open-plan office was a kind of organized chaos. It was an ecosystem that ran on confidence, and Maya felt like she didn't belong. Her invisibility was a skill she'd perfected over a lifetime, but here, it was pure survival. She'd watched the other interns, like Chad, who could turn a coffee run into a networking win. He'd come back bragging about a great chat he had with a VP in the elevator, his voice booming as he marked his territory. Then there was Brenda, the manager who assigned their tasks. Her eyes would scan the interns, but they always seemed to slide right over Maya as if she were a chair. "Chad, I need you on the sterling pitch," she'd say. "Emily, sync with marketing." Maya's assignments usually came through a short email, tasks that were essential but invisible, like data entry or archiving. Lunch was the loneliest hour. The other interns gathered in loud groups, dissecting office politics. Maya would take her sandwich to a forgotten corner of the cafeteria behind a large potted plant. It was her sanctuary. From there, she'd watch the social dance of the office, feeling completely removed. This feeling of being unheard was a familiar weight. It reminded her of home, and not in a good way. Her younger brother, Leo, had been born profoundly deaf. Growing up, Maya was his bridge to the world. She learned sign language not as a skill, but as a language of love. But she also saw the frustration in his eyes when people refused to learn his language, treating him like an inconvenience. She saw how they'd talk louder, as if volume was the answer. Those moments built a fierce, protective love in Maya's heart, but they also taught her to be quiet. Drawing attention could be dangerous. So at Innovate Corp, she did the same. She did her work, she was polite, and she was invisible. In one team meeting, she spotted a huge error in a dataset. Her heart hammered as she quietly spoke up. "I think, the Q2 numbers for the European market might be skewed," she whispered. Brenda barely glanced at her. "We've triple-checked the data, Maya." 10 minutes later, Chad, who had secretly run the numbers after her comment, announced, "Hold on, guys. I've spotted something. The Q2 European data is way off. Good thing I caught that." Brenda beamed at him. "Excellent work, Chad." Maya felt a hot flush of humiliation and shrank back into her chair, her invisibility cloak wrapping tightly around her. That was just how the world worked. The loudest voice always won. Section 2, a silence in the lobby. The change came on a Tuesday morning, not with a bang, but with a quiet, persistent tapping. Down in the gleaming marble lobby, a man in his late 50s stood at the reception desk. He had a distinguished air about him, but his brow was furrowed with frustration. The receptionist, Tiffany, was completely flustered. "Sir, I'm sorry," Tiffany said, her voice a little too loud. "I don't understand. Can you type it on your phone for me?" The man shook his head, a flicker of weariness in his eyes. He lifted his hands and made a series of fluid gestures in American Sign Language, ASL. He was trying to explain something, but his words, formed in the air, were vanishing. Up on the 45th floor, a live feed of the lobby security camera was displayed on a large monitor. Most employees walked right past it. But Maya, on her way to refill a water pitcher, happened to look up at that exact moment. Her feet stopped. The pitcher in her hand felt heavy. She recognized that look on the man's face. It was the same look she'd seen on her brother Leo's face 1,000 times. The look of being on the outside of a locked door. The quiet desperation in his gestures was a language she understood better than any spoken word. Her mind started racing. Her survival instinct screamed at her. "Stay quiet. It's not your place. You're just an intern. Someone else will handle it. Don't draw attention to yourself. Brenda will see you. Chad will make a joke." But another voice, quieter but stronger, pushed back. It was the voice of a sister who had promised to always be a bridge for her brother. She saw the man on the screen, not as a problem, but as a person who felt isolated and unseen. In a company that bragged about connection, a man stood completely disconnected in their own lobby. The internal struggle was paralyzing. She could just turn away, fill the pitcher, and go back to her desk. No one would ever know. But as she watched Tiffany shrug helplessly and turn to answer a phone, something inside Maya clicked. The fear was still there, a cold knot in her stomach. But for the first time, her empathy was stronger. The risk of being seen finally felt smaller than the shame of turning away. She put the water pitcher down. Her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. With each step towards the elevator, she felt as if 1,000 eyes were on her, even if no one was looking. The short ride down felt like an eternity. When the doors opened, the scene was just as tense as it looked on screen. The man had stepped back from the desk, looking lost, as a security guard approached him, speaking slowly and loudly. Taking a deep breath, Maya walked forward. Her sensible shoes made almost no sound on the marble. She stopped a few feet from the man, hesitating for one final, heart-stopping second. Then, she lifted her hands. With her heart pounding, Maya raised her hands and offered the visitor a small, tentative smile. Her fingers moved, shaping the air into a simple question. "Hello," she signed, her movements a little rusty but clear. "My name is Maya. Can I help you?" The effect was instant. The man's face, which had been a mask of tension, transformed. His eyes widened, and a wave of pure relief washed over him. It was like a light had been switched on in a dark room. He immediately signed back, his hands moving with a fluid, articulate grace. "Thank you," he signed, his relief obvious. "Yes, thank you so much. I thought no one would understand." The lobby seemed to fall silent. Tiffany stared, her mouth slightly open. The security guard froze mid-stride. In that moment, Maya had done more than just communicate. She had shattered the wall of sound separating this man from everyone else. For the first time since he'd walked in, he was seen. "I have a meeting," he continued, "with Mr. Harrison. For the new accessibility initiative." The instructions were unclear. Maya's shyness began to fade, replaced by the familiar comfort of her first language. Of course, she signed back, a genuine smile on her lips. "Mr. Harrison's office is on the 60th floor. It's the executive elevator bank. I can walk you." Their silent conversation flowed. In this bubble of shared understanding, she forgot she was the invisible intern. She forgot about Brenda's dismissive looks and Chad's loud voice. She was simply Maya, a communicator. A helper. A bridge. What she didn't know was that this entire exchange was being watched. Mr. Alastair Harrison, the founder and CEO of Innovate Corp., was on his way to the lobby to personally greet this exact visitor. As he rounded a corner, he saw the scene, the flustered receptionist, the approaching guard, and the visitor looking deeply uncomfortable. He was about to stride forward and take control. But then, he saw her. A young, black intern he didn't recognize, stepping forward. He watched as she lifted her hands and began to sign. He saw the immediate change in the visitor's demeanor, the shift from isolation to connection. Mr. Harrison stopped in his tracks, hidden by a large pillar. He stood there, completely still, watching the silent, graceful conversation. He had seen thousands of presentations in his career, but he had rarely, if ever, been moved. Now, in his own lobby, he was witnessing something that cut through all the corporate noise. He saw not an intern trying to impress, but a human being showing genuine compassion. Maya, completely oblivious, escorted the visitor to the elevators. As the doors slid shut, she felt a quiet sense of pride. Now, she just had to get back to the 45th floor before anyone noticed she was gone. She turned, her head down, ready to slip back into her cloak of invisibility. She didn't see the CEO step out from behind the pillar, his gaze following her with a complex expression of surprise, contemplation, and something that looked like a memory. He didn't call out. He just watched until she was gone, a single, burning question in his mind: who was that intern? Section 4, the summons back on the 45th floor. Maya slipped into her seat, relieved. No one seemed to have noticed she was gone. Chad was telling a story, and Brenda was on the phone. The incident in the lobby began to feel like a dream. At 11:47 a.m., an email popped up. The subject line was stark: meeting request. The sender was Harrison, Alastair, CEO, Office of the. Maya's blood ran cold. It had to be a mistake. The CEO's office didn't summon interns. She clicked open the email, her hand trembling. "Ms. Williams, please come to my office on the 60th floor at 12 p.m. sharp. Regards, Eliza Vance, Executive Assistant to the CEO, 13 minutes. Her stomach twisted into a knot. This couldn't be good. She hadn't been invisible after all. Someone must have reported her for overstepping. Maybe she had misunderstood the visitor's signs and offended him. She was going to be fired. "Everything okay, Maya?" It was Emily, looking over with concern. Maya just nodded, wide-eyed with panic, and pointed at the screen. Emily leaned in, her expression shifting to pure shock. "The CEO?" Emily whispered. "What did you do?" Chad, overhearing, swiveled in his chair. "Harrison wants to see you," he smirked. "Someone's in trouble." His words hit her like a punch. She stood up, her legs feeling like lead. The entire intern pod was staring. Her worst nightmare was real. She was the center of attention for all the wrong reasons. The elevator ride up to the 60th floor was a silent, terrifying ascent. The 60th floor was different. The air was rarefied, the silence profound. The carpet was so thick it absorbed all sound. At the end of a long hallway, a severe-looking woman sat behind a massive desk. "Ms. Williams?" she asked, her voice as polished as the desk. "Yes," Maya squeaked. "Mr. Harrison will see you now." She pointed to a set of towering double doors. Maya took a shaky breath and pushed the door open. The office was vast. A floor-to-ceiling window offered a godlike view of the city. In the center, behind a huge mahogany desk, sat Mr. Alastair Harrison, silhouetted against the bright skyline. He didn't look up right away. The silence stretched, broken only by the frantic hammering of Maya's own heart. Finally, he closed a notebook and looked up. His gray eyes fixed on her. They weren't angry, but they were intensely analytical. "Ms. Williams," he said, his voice calm and deep. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." He gestured to a single chair in front of his desk. It felt less like an invitation and more like a summons to the witness stand. She perched on the edge of the seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I called you here," he began, his voice even and measured, "because I was hoping you could explain your actions in the lobby this morning." Section 5, The Revelation and the Reward, Explain Your Actions. The words hung in the air. Maya's mind went blank. She lowered her gaze, unable to meet his stare. Her voice was a fragile whisper. "I'm sorry, sir. I know it wasn't my place. I saw that the visitor was having trouble and I just wanted to help. It won't happen again." Mr. Harrison was silent for a long moment. Maya braced herself to be fired. But the words never came. Instead, the stern lines around his mouth softened. A faint smile touched his lips. "Ms. Williams," he said, his tone changed. The icy authority was gone, replaced by something that sounded like sincerity. "I'm not asking for an apology. What I saw this morning was the most impressive display of initiative I have witnessed in this company in years." Maya's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. She must have misheard him. "That visitor," Mr. Harrison continued, "is Mr. Daniel Clark, a leading advocate for disability rights and our key consultant for a company-wide accessibility overhaul. He is, to put it mildly, extremely important. He told me that his first impression of Innovate Corp wasn't frustration, but of being welcomed and understood. Because of you." He paused. "You showed me what real inclusion looks like. We spend millions on training programs to teach empathy. And yet, when faced with a real situation, my staff fumbled. But you, an intern, didn't hesitate. You saw a person, not a problem. You built a bridge. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Maya was speechless. She could only shake her head. "Tell me, Maya," Mr. Harrison said, his gaze drifting to the city view. "Where did you learn to communicate with such humanity?" The question was so personal it broke through her fear. She thought of her brother, Leo. The image of his smiling face gave her a sudden surge of courage. "My younger brother, sir," she said, her voice gaining a quiet strength. "He's deaf. I learned sign language for him, so he wouldn't feel left out. When I saw Mr. Clark, I recognized that look. I couldn't just stand by." Mr. Harrison's eyes met hers again, and this time, she saw a flicker of deep, resonant sadness. "My daughter, Sarah," he said, his voice barely a whisper, was hard of hearing. "We lost her in an accident a few years ago." He looked down, the powerful CEO suddenly looking vulnerable. She always said that people who truly understand communication don't just translate words. They translate worlds. A profound, unspoken understanding passed between them. This wasn't just business for him. It was personal. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat, his composure returning but his eyes retaining a new warmth. "This company has been too focused on the bottom line. I've been looking for someone to lead our new accessibility initiative. Not a consultant with a binder full of jargon, but someone who understands this from the heart. He leaned forward, his gaze direct. Maya, your internship is over. Effective immediately, I am offering you a full-time position. Not in marketing. I want you to work directly with me. I want you to lead this initiative. You will have the full backing of my office and the authority to make the changes this company desperately needs. Maya stared at him, her mind reeling. It felt like a dream. Her, the invisible intern, being offered a role where the quietest skill she had, born from love for her brother, was now her greatest professional strength. Tears welled in her eyes, not of fear, but of overwhelming gratitude. Her voice, when she finally found it, was steady and clear. Thank you, sir, she said. Thank you. I won't let you down. I know you won't, he replied with a confident nod. Section 6, the new normal. When Maya walked out of the CEO's office, the world had shifted. As the elevator doors opened back on the 45th floor, the intern pod fell silent. They expected to see her in tears. Instead, they saw a woman walking with her head held high. She walked to her desk, gathered her things, and then went over to Brenda. Brenda, Maya said calmly. Brenda turned, annoyed, then looked confused as she saw Maya holding her belongings. Mr. Harrison has offered me a new position, Maya stated simply. I'll be leading the company's new accessibility initiative. I'll be in touch next week to schedule a meeting with your department. Brenda's jaw dropped. Chad looked like he'd been struck by lightning. The invisible intern was now, essentially, their superior on a new, CEO-backed project. The story spread through Innovate Corp like wildfire, a modern-day fable about the quiet hero. For Maya, it was the beginning of real work. She wasn't a loud leader. She led with the same quiet empathy and sharp observation she'd always had. She organized voluntary ASL classes for employees, which filled to capacity in hours. Chad was one of the first to sign up, his old arrogance replaced by a genuine respect. Working with IT, she implemented better captioning services for all company meetings. She established a resource group for employees with disabilities and their allies, creating a culture where everyone felt heard. Mr. Harrison became her mentor. He saw how her quiet determination was changing the heart of the company, steering it from a culture of pure profit toward one of purpose. Inclusive practices weren't just good for people, they were good for business.